Good morning, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Merci d'être là. Thank you for being here with us this morning. So welcome to this webinar of the Business in Tandem series. Today's topics will be about business opportunities in the fintech sector in Toronto and Montreal. So my name is Mathieu Paquette-Lambert. It is my honor to be here with you and to host this event this morning. I'm the director of Fintech Development for Finance Montreal and the Montreal Fintech Station. So I would like to use a little bit of this time to start by thanking our partners. So starting with the City of Montreal, also in association with the Toronto Region Board of Trade and the World Trade Center Toronto. Let's not forget the Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan Montreal that made this event possible today. And also the Economic Development Agency of Canada for the regions of Quebec for their ongoing support for World Trade Center Montreal's activities. Finally, let me highlight the presence of two amazing partners. So the Bureau du Québec à Toronto and also Montréal International. Let me tell you a little bit about the functioning of the event. Today, we're going to have 3 presentation blocks. So after each of those blocks, we're going to have a Q&A period. So while our speakers are doing their presentations, you can start putting your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and it will be, and I will address them to the speakers. You can choose the language you want to ask the questions, and it will be my pleasure to translate it if needed. I'm talking obviously about French or English. So also after the event, if you want to watch the webinar again, it will be made available on the Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan Montreal website and also their YouTube page. All right, so we're gonna welcome our first guest today for some opening remarks. I will now give the floor to Veronique Doucet, Director of Economic Development Department at the City of Montreal. Veronique.
Merci Mathieu. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Good morning, everybody. I'm pleased to be here today with you at the Business in Tandem event series that is a joint initiative between our partners with the Chamber of Montreal of Commerce, Metropolitan of Montreal, and also with our partners of Toronto, like the City of Montreal, the City of Toronto, and the Toronto Region Board Trade also that is with us today, with whom we have excellent relationship, of course. I would like to also extend my greetings to my counterpart of the City of Toronto, Mrs. Cheryl Blackman. Good morning, Cheryl. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Our two cities have a lot of points in common. But first of all, we're going through hell since a year. So that's a point that is common for both of our cities, but also it brought us to work together on issues that we have, like revitalizing the downtown part of large metropolitan area and large city of Canadian cities. So we've been working the last months together to get through that crisis that we're living through. So maybe the best thing in the crisis, if there's a good thing about a crisis, is the fact that we've been working closer together, and I hope that it will keep on going like that. So the edition of this morning for the Business in Tandem will focus, as Mathieu said, on the industry that is very important for our two cities, the fintech sector. And what we did this morning for you is we brought together key players, and I would say the best key players in town that we could find, or in Montreal or in Toronto, to introduce you to the ecosystem and to also present you business and collaboration opportunities that you could have in both cities. So trust me, you're in very good hand this morning, so enjoy it. Also, like Mathieu just said, I would highlight the presence of this morning of our colleagues from the Montreal International. That is our investment promotion agency in Montreal, and also from our friend from Quebec office in Toronto. Also, let me take a few words for the part of my team that is also there this morning, and for whom I'm very thankful for all the work that has been done to make those activities possible. So the City of Montreal, just to put a bit of context to the activity of this morning, the City of Montreal has launched in last June first recovery plan that is called A Boost for a Metropolis, acting now. And the activity that we're assisting this morning, Business in Tandem, is an initiative that came with that launch, with that plan of recovery. So we thought at that time that our business were facing a lot of constraints, and we quickly realized that the challenge of trying to conduct interprovincial or international business development was very hard. So, and we know that it's crucial also for the growth and the economic health of our businesses to be in contact with international partners. So, in fact, what we did at that time is we said we had to take care of that, and we made it happen with the activities that you are attending this morning. So in sum, I wish you a very pleasant and productive event this morning. I really invite you to register for the B2B meeting that are organized by the World Trade Center Montreal. So I hope that you will do it and that you will benefit from those activities. So now it's your turn to make it happen. So it's in your hands. So enjoy and make sure that you take the most of all the activities that are available for you. Have a good one.
Thank you, Veronique, for being here with us this morning. So now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Cheryl Blackman, General Manager of Economic Development and Culture at the City of Toronto. Cheryl.
And good morning, Mathieu and Madame Veronique Doucet. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm honored to be welcoming everybody this morning. So good morning, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan Montreal for the invitation to speak with you this morning at this event. It is a pleasure to be with you virtually. Montreal and Toronto, we have a shared history, two cities with growing tech clusters, two cities that are cosmopolitan, multicultural, and global, two cities that aim to build a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse fintech community. With Canada's favorable immigration policies, because we are both progressive, education-focused cities, we are able to attract the best talent from around the world to fuel the fintech sector. Our cities across the globe are dealing with the impacts of COVID-19, as Veronique has mentioned. We are all working together to understand the immediate challenges that we're going to be facing as a society and economies, and the long-term impacts of COVID-19 that will have on our businesses and our residents of our cities. Fintech companies are at the forefront of Toronto and Montreal's innovation, and the ecosystem that we are trying to develop together is a unique opportunity to accelerate economic transformation and lead the next growth cycle by leveraging technology to empower businesses and individuals around the world. The fintech sector can be a force to accelerate economic recovery and growth across many segments of our economy. And we're so excited that technology solutions can be leveraged to help rebuild the economy to foster a more resilient, innovative workforce and support public health, community services, and cultural sectors towards growth. Fintech startups are working with the larger financial players to create new products and services that are giving Canadian consumers more choice and flexibility with their day-to-day lives, including their banking, purchasing of new financial products and services. Both cities benefit when we share our expertise in cybersecurity, blockchain, and artificial intelligence to create new and innovative fintech products and services. Both of our cities have clusters that are thriving when we use the innovation to create new fintech products that are incorporating security, data, and privacy. All of our collaboration together in this cluster has given us an edge and a competitive strength in our respective fintech companies and tech communities that only is possible through collaboration and leveraging each other's strengths as we build an international brand that contributes to both these economic wealth and prosperity and recovery. So as the broader economy shifts from respond to recover through COVID-19, there are new opportunities that will be created. And a key question that we have to ask ourselves is how will we leverage this unique opportunity and these assets and skills to seize these new opportunities? So I would like to extend a warm welcome today to today's speakers and panelists and guests. And I really look forward to the diversity of thought and learning more about the thriving fintech sectors in both Toronto and Montreal. Have a great morning and really enjoy this time together. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Cheryl and Veronique. Also, I'm sure that the fintechs here today with us are glad to know that their cities is supporting them and the sector. So now let's get started with the first presentation block of the day. It's my pleasure to invite my own CEO, Jacques Deforge, who is Chief Executive Officer at Finance Montreal, to discuss with me the business opportunities in Montreal regarding fintech. So good morning, Jacques. Welcome.
Hey, good morning, Mathieu. Long time no talk.
Yeah. So Jacques, I would not say that if we were in an event with maybe European countries, but I think it's snowing where you are today in Quebec.
Absolutely.
So we're all Canadians here, so we're used to that. Jacques, can you start by telling us what is Finance Montreal?
Well, thank you, Mathieu, and good morning, everyone. I'm quite happy, and thank you to the organizers as well. I see lots of faces that I know around the table, so it's a pleasure. And well, Finance Montreal, as you know, Mathieu, but maybe not the other ones, is the financial cluster for Montreal and the province of Quebec. So we basically, we're a young organization. We just passed the 10 years last year, and we have over 50 members. And what's interesting is our members cover all the spectrum of what you could expect. We have, of course, banks, insurers, asset managers, with the regulator, AMF, lots of advisory and legal firms, lots of universities, tech companies, the Ministry of Finance, agencies, and very interestingly, we have some fintechs who are members, some large tech companies. So that's what we are, a very interesting group of people which support our mission. Our mission is to develop basically the financial services industry. And we do it by collaboration and mobilizing the troops. So of course, we're a small organization, as you know, Mathieu, but we through us, we can reach to a lot of resources from our members. So we define our focus, not to the surprise of anyone, I'm sure. We focus a lot of fintech and innovation. As we know, technology is a big factor in finance. Of course, everything that talks about sustainable finance, talent development, and of course the international positioning of Montreal. And particularly interesting to the audience today, we have I think one of the best projects operations here with the Station Fintech. You know very well, Mathieu, what it is, which is a unique space where we basically work together to encourage innovation and commercialization of innovation in the finance industry. That's what we are, very dynamic organization.
Yeah, and you know, I'll get to talk a little more about the fintech station later on. So, you know, to put the table, could you, because I don't think even people from Montreal maybe are not conscious of this. What is can you tell us a little bit about the financial ecosystem of Montreal, its size, its diversity of players, that kind of numbers?
Yeah, you're right. It's not well known, and I'm not sure why exactly. Some industries are more visible. Finance is maybe a bit more shy. Some example, but it's a very important sector of the industry, of the economy. The GDP, the proportion of GDP is over 6%, 6 to 7%, so it's quite sizable. In terms of headcounts and employment, we have in Montreal alone, we have over 100,000 people, 110,000 people, I believe, working in over 3,000 financial companies, subsidiaries, and institutions. So it's quite large. I think for Quebec, it's 150,000. We have a big cluster in Quebec City, but in Montreal itself, it's over 100,000 people. About 50% in banking, 30% in insurance, rest in investments, and so on. In terms of diversity of people, close to 40,000 CPAs, a very large crowd of CFAs as well, I think close to 3,000. We have a lot of certified risk professionals as well, over 2,000. Financial analysts, 14,000. And I'm checking my numbers, close to 45,000 accounts and auditors. So it's a lot of people So there is a depth in terms of skills and talents across the full spectrum of what finance is all about. Not to forget also, half of the Canada's pension funds are located in Montreal. CDPQ, of course, everybody knows CDPQ, PSP as well, it's headquartered in Montreal, Quebec, large pension fund, Air Canada, CN, and so on and so forth. So lots of investments happening in Montreal. So it's a complete, sophisticated, deep, quite international, high-tech sector that you can find if you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, we can understand how like all those factors make it a great environment for a fintech company to develop. A little bit more specifically about that, why do you think Montreal is a great place to establish a fintech company?
That's funny, Mathieu, because when we rehearsed our presentation, I saw that I could ask you the same question. But I'll try. I'll take a first attempt, and then you can complement me.
Absolutely.
You know more than me in that space. Well, as I said, just the fact that we have a great collaboration between the industry, it's fascinating to observe. Personally, I've been there for over a year, and when you think about our members, they all compete among each other outside of Finance Montreal. But when it comes to economic development, there is a great collaboration to support the development of the industry, especially in the fintech sector. So we have lots of institutions here. We have 3 banks headquartered here. We have the biggest credit union, Desjardins, very diversified industry, all kind of products, markets, sub-markets, experienced talent in all sectors. So it's quite interesting for an entrepreneur again to put its feet in our industry in Quebec. Lots of capabilities in talent as well in terms of data, quant, cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. Just a quick word on AI. Montreal is known to be a strong place for AI, and AI is instrumental for innovation in finance as well. So we just checking numbers yesterday. We did a LinkedIn research, and based on that, we have over close to 20,000 workers in Quebec with AI skills. 19% of Montreal's AI workers have PhDs and 48% have a master's degree. So very interesting element for fintech. So it's a leader in AI applied to finance. We have an organization like FinML, for example, which is an organization that helps with researchers specialized in machine learning applied to financial sector. And to conclude on what I'm saying, let's not forget the education and university. We have 11 universities, 60 colleges, at least 35,000 students somehow enrolled in programs related to finance, banking, IT. And last but not least, research chairs in finance and fintech. We have our own chair, as you know, Mathieu, that we created with AMF, our regulator here, which is specialized in fintech. So, complete spectrum of what you need to be a successful fintech. Last but not least, because it's always forgotten, but historically and still today, Montreal is a great link with Europe, of course, due to our French link. But there are lots of, we try to be a bridge between Europe and North America. So for a fintech present here, it's quite interesting because we have access to Europe, and vice versa. We are very pleased to host European fintechs here in Montreal. And what would you complement after what I said?
What I would like to put the emphasis on what you just said, first of all, is collaboration. I've been at Finance Montreal for 7 years now, actually. I think that a lot of the things that we've accomplished on the fintech side is really the result of years of collaboration between our members through our platform. And we can mention the Canada Fintech Forum that was created in 2013, and that is now the biggest fintech event in the country, coming back virtually in the fall, by the way, spoiler alert. And also now the Montreal Fintech Station, which is kind of a unique asset that we have in Montreal. It's a 25,000 square foot space, really all dedicated to fintech, with the main goal of fostering collaboration between fintechs and the Finance Montreal members, which are the major financial institutions of Canada. So, and our newest addition, I would say, is a great business opportunity. Is the launch of the Station Fintech Montréal Accelerator. So, again, it's going to be a collaboration. The goal is to make startup work with the members, and we're going to work on with thematic cohorts. So the first one's going to be in payments. So a call here to all the paytechs that are here today. So we're currently recruiting paytech startup to participate to our first cohort of the accelerator, an accelerator that we created in partnership with Highline Beta. And that's also something that allows us to bring a new kind of financing for fintech startups in Montreal. So because we're going to offer, it's going to be optional, but we're going to offer $25,000 for 2% equity in that for that accelerator if you're accepted. So that's a new kind of financing for really early stage startups. So talking about financing, we also have a lot of very active fintech investors here in Montreal. Let me mention Luge Capital, Impression Ventures, Portage, and those are all the ones that are specifically targeted at fintechs. Also First Capital Partners, and very for our market, we have like 4 organizations that are specifically dedicated to support fintech entrepreneurs. So we have us, of course, the Montreal Fintech Station, but there's also the Holt Accelerator that is based in Montreal, Fintech Cadence that is based out of Montreal, Diagram Ventures also that is based out of Montreal. So it's a very well organized entrepreneur support system that we have here. And I'll only mention the organizations that were fintech focused because we have all those other players that are that plays in a multitude of sectors, but that do serve the and support the fintechs. The business angel, angel investors network here is very well organized through Ange Québec. The institutions are open to collaborate with startups. So, I can mention the collaboration between Emma, an insurtech here in Montreal, and Humania, a big Canadian insurer. Also, Hard Bacon with Desjardins, Flinks with National Bank. And we're starting to have those, not starting, but we have more and more of those success stories that brings some maturity to the ecosystem. So we can talk about Lightspeed, Nuvei that got on the stock market last year. Also, we have Expertus that just sold to IBM.
Expertus being a member of Finance Montreal for so
exactly. So talking about that maturity, a few years back, members of Finance Montreal were long established institutions. Now we're having even like those fintechs like Expertus or Creases that are now member of Finance Montreal. So I could talk about that for hours. I think honestly, that's what I do most of my days, talking to entrepreneurs and other partners to really develop the fintech ecosystem here in Montreal. We're arriving at the end of our time here. Do you have anything to add in conclusion of this discussion?
Well, I think we had a compelling story here in Montreal, but beyond that, and I'd like to extend greetings to my counterparts in Toronto, because Toronto, Montreal, we all work for Canada in some way. So it's a global competition. So as long as the two main centers are strong in the fintech, we're all good. But to come back to Montreal, I'd like to say that hope you realize that it's a complete ecosystem, both in terms of industry diversity, in terms of skills, in terms of AI, with a sense of collaboration around the innovation. So for someone who wants to be supported, helped, welcomed, greeted, and accompanied, taken through all the stages of development, definitely Montreal has great advantages with the funding, with the support system, institutions around that. The bridge to Europe as well, I think it's important, is not mentioned enough in the past. But I think it's underestimated. Probably the best asset that we have here. It's nightlife, it's restaurants, it's people, it's the bilingual aspects of the city. things that we know exist. They're a bit on the shutdown these days, but I'm sure we'll rebound on that front, and that definitely a kind of advantage to establish in Montreal. So, and in conclusion, I say we have the best director in fintech development in Canada. It's you, Mathieu.
Oh my God! Thanks, Jacques. Thank you so much. It's very kind. And thanks for joining the event yesterday. It's always a pleasure to discuss fintech with you, and we'll do that again probably this week.
Number one, yeah.
All right, thank you, Jacques. So I remember to everybody that you can start putting your questions in the Q&A box. So we're gonna come back with Jacques a little later after the next presentation to take the questions. So now let me introduce to you for the next presentation Jennifer Reynolds. She is President and Chief Executive Officer at Toronto Finance International, and she's going to present to us the business opportunities in Toronto in the fintech sector. Jennifer, welcome.
Thanks so much, Mathieu. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm just going to share my screen here and put up a short presentation that I'll take folks through on the line. I'm going to start by saying that I really do think Jacques' comments around, talking about Canada and just the strength of the overall fintech ecosystem in Canada is always where we start when we're out marketing globally, because I think we have such a fantastic story. And obviously the Toronto and Montreal fintech ecosystems are just such an important part of that. So just to begin, for those who don't know us on the line, we are a very similar organization to Finance Montréal. Our job is to promote the Toronto Financial Centre, the Canadian financial sector globally, to drive investment and talent here. And domestically, we're focused on issues which go to the growth and competitiveness of the industry. So we spend a lot of time around the innovation ecosystem, fintech, talent, sustainable finance, of course, driving capital towards the transition to a lower carbon economy. And we work with a variety of different partners, much like Finance Montréal. The large financial services companies are on our leadership council. We also, on our leadership council, is the Mayor of Toronto, and then the Ministers of Finance for Canada and Ontario, and of course the Premier as well. But really the ecosystem is much larger that we're working with. It's all of the industry associations, the professional services associations, the broader financial services sector altogether. And we also work very closely, obviously, with our economic development associations and academia as well. This slide just shows some of the global partnerships that we have. We're a part of several international networks, one UN convened one, which Montreal is also a part of, FC4S, which is, its mission, of course, is to drive capital towards sustainable finance, and also the World Association of International Financial Centers. So we spend a lot of time working with our partners on the international stage as well. I'll just go briefly through the first part of this presentation. Talks a bit about, the broader financial services sector, which I think people on the line are obviously very familiar with. Toronto is second largest financial center in North America. Unfortunately, folks outside of Canada don't often know that, so we do try to tell that story. We have an incredible density of people working in the financial services sector, more actually than New York or London even. It's just over 8% of people in the city work in the financial services sector. But interestingly, the tech sector is about the same. Just about 8% of people working in Toronto work in the tech sector. So I think clearly those two things are benefits to the overall fintech ecosystem, financial services as well. I'm going to briefly just touch upon, some of our larger financial services companies. Of course, the big banks. Those big banks are an important part of the fintech ecosystem because they spend a lot of money on technology as well, about 14 billion annually. So that's a key factor in the growth in our fintech ecosystem. If we think about our insurers, clearly we're home to many of the world's largest insurers, Manulife and Sun Life, big players across Canada, but certainly in Toronto, and also many property and casualty insurers present in the city and in Canada as well. And our pension funds are obviously very well known, whether those situated here in Toronto or in Montreal. That's something that globally we are proud to always talk about. They are international investors, very well known, and actually third in terms of total assets globally. So a huge factor to the success of our overall financial services sector. I'm going to skip forward right into the fintech ecosystem because that's why we're here today. If we think about the different elements of the fintech ecosystem, whether that's academia, research, the regulatory environment, government environment, I think that overall in Canada has improved dramatically over the last sort of 5 to 7 years, I would say. So we've had a lot of positive developments for the funding going to the sector, whether that's different regulatory changes that are starting to happen, always too slow, but starting to happen at least. And certainly the research and the talent pool has been a big part of the ecosystem as well. This is overall in Canada, there's about 1,200 fintechs, just to give people the lay of the land, very diverse in terms of the distribution of areas of focus. This is a recent study that just showed up, and I'm proud to see so many Canadian cities in the top 20 fintech hubs globally. So we really try to get out and tell that story, the strength overall in Canada, and the strength certainly of Toronto and Montreal as well. Investment environment has, if you look back over the years, it has improved dramatically. It looks a bit lumpy there because of 2018, and obviously this year it's started off to a slow start, but I think we're starting to see increasing levels of investment into the fintech ecosystem, which is obviously positive for everybody. Earlier, there was a discussion around some of the fintech accelerators. This just gives you a lay of the land across Canada and tremendous growth in terms of venture capital going into the sector, which is great. We're also seeing VCs, which are very focused or solely focused on fintech. So more and more sophisticated investors, which is good. And most of the deals done, over about half of the deals done in Canada have US investors too. So we're seeing a ton of interest cross-border too. I'll flip forward. We talked about partnerships generally. There's great support from the financial services sector for those incubators, I would say, and growing number of partnerships between the big FIs and the fintech ecosystem. It's obviously a part of their strategy, and we're seeing some of those partnerships really develop and mature, which is good to see. We talked about AI earlier with Jacques and Mathieu. That's obviously something we should be getting out there and telling everyone. I think globally we are recognized. We're actually, Canada's AI sector ranks 4th globally. So that's a huge strength for us. We know at the budget, we just saw more government funds allocated to growing our AI sector, which is fantastic. The research both in Montreal and Toronto has benefited all of us, certainly. And now it is, we're seeing the big players come to both of our cities and look to access that talent by putting their development centers in our cities. I won't dwell on these ones, but obviously areas of strengths as well. A huge amount of investment in quantum, blockchain, cybersecurity. Any financial services center has got to have a strong cybersecurity ecosystem, but I think Canada stacks up very well globally. I think I've talked about most of those points. In terms of the policy environment, I think everybody in line knows there's clearly a dialogue around open banking. Hopefully that will move forward in the near future. Modernization of the payment system, another key piece, which hopefully will move forward as well in the future. From a tax perspective, we're actually very competitive in terms of marginal effective tax rate there. You can see relative to other major financial services sectors, very competitive. And I think in terms of cost per workstation, again, very competitive relative to global financial centers. Everyone always talks about how expensive it is to certainly live in Toronto. It is expensive, but when you think about other global financial services centers, it's actually very competitive. This just looks at total wage and rent costs. So again, very competitive from a cost perspective. And then I'm going to finish it off with just a couple of facts that we always talk about when we are out marketing, just the diversity. And I'm very proud of the diversity of Canada and certainly Toronto. I think that's a differentiating factor. We're a very welcoming place to be, and I think we get great talent here as a result of that. In Toronto, 51% of our people who live here are from outside of Canada, or were born outside of Canada. So I think that speaks certainly to how welcoming the environment is here. So I think people are very familiar with some of the other stats in this page on the line. So I'm going to leave my presentation at that and look forward to taking any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Jennifer, for this presentation. It's always interesting, to have an update about all of this. So everyone in the audience, I invite you to type some questions in the Q&A box right now. And we're gonna have, yes, so we have Jacques that is back also. So, you know, while we're waiting for the participants to address some questions in the Q&A box, I have one for you. So what kind of collaboration, how the two ecosystems should collaborate in the future? And I have examples that we've done over the years, but I'd like to hear you about collaboration between Montreal and Toronto in the fintech space.
Oh, Jennifer, ladies first.
Yeah, no, I think as I said at the beginning of my presentation, I just think it's so important for us to talk about brand Canada. I don't think it serves any of us well if we go out and all tell different stories. People want to hear about Canada and all the great things. So I do think that it's so important to be coordinated. And to your point, Mathieu, we have done some great work together when we've been out. We've done some fintech missions together or been at fintech conferences globally together and done presentations. So that, to my mind, we're just going to be much better if we're working together on that front. And talent is mobile. I mean, this pandemic has demonstrated that it doesn't even matter anymore if you hire someone really in Montreal or Toronto. You just want to get the best talent. So first we have to get that talent here to Canada, and then hopefully get it working in our financial service sector and our fintech ecosystem.
Yeah. Well, yes, Jacques.
No, I agree. I mean, I would emphasize that, as you said, Jennifer, it's a global business. So I'm always looking for ways to expose any entrepreneur to any, I would say, potential client. So that can be accomplished through international mission. We've done missions with Toronto and vice versa. So, I mean, obviously we have contacts with Desjardins, for example, which is a very large player in the Canadian system. So if a fintech in Toronto wants to have introduction with Desjardins, it would be our pleasure to establish the link, because at the end of the day, we want the success of the entrepreneurs, and we want the creation of wealth and success for everyone. So, I mean, the opportunity is so much bigger than it's very large when you think about it. There is enough for everyone.
Well, thank you for this. So we have first questions from the audience. So are there any current projects happening now that are working with both the Montreal and Toronto ecosystem? I have my ideas about that, but do you have anything to answer first?
Well, to be honest, I would direct the question to you if you are not the moderator. I'm going to take a chance.
No, well, you know, coming back to what I just said during our discussion, Jacques. So the accelerator that we're creating, I think it's a great opportunity. It's pan-Canadian, and it's a great opportunity to develop the whole sector in Canada. And we partnered with a company headquartered in Toronto that have also presence in Montreal and Vancouver to create this accelerator. So I think you know, this would be a great example of collaboration between the different ecosystems. You know. Also, you know, I'm you know, thinking of Fintech Cadence now, that with their Ascension program, that in the first year only had Quebec startups. Now, you know, they have startups from all over Canada. So I think we're, you know, the ecosystem is getting a little more. We're putting some gates down, if I can sit like that. So that would be the two examples that are you know, that are coming to mind.
The other one I would add to that is just those fintech missions that we've been running the last couple of years are Canadian, and we always are seeking out companies from Montreal as well. And I know you've been helpful with my colleague Sarah when she's been reaching out to try and direct us to some great fintechs in the Montreal region as well.
Absolutely. And you know, there's sorry, I don't know the name in English, but Affaires Mondiales Canada, that is always there to help us connect between provinces, when we're doing international efforts. And there's also the Quebec that have this network of delegations in the world. So we maybe have time for another question. So talking about working together, how can we work together to address the necessary changes to regulation, access, and open banking? So this one is coming from Lawrence Cook, which was a participant in the last mission that we did together, by the way. So Jennifer, do you have anything to say about the changes to regulation and open banking in Canada?
Yeah, I think, that it's a good point. We certainly have organized roundtables with fintechs and governments, try to make sure that, voices are being heard. And we've submitted ourselves, as I'm sure you have, papers and to government when they're seeking, when they're out consulting. We've been a part of the open banking consultations that happen in person as well. I'm sure you've been doing all of these things as well, but it raises a good point that there is the potential for us to do something together on that front, because I suspect our views would be quite similar on some of these issues.
Yeah, possibly, and I think obviously through our membership too. I mean, because talking about industry clusters, definitely when you look at the roundtable, both at TFI and Finance Montreal, I mean, obviously, all the CEOs and all the big players have access directly to the government, so there is intense lobbying made on different topics. But I guess from an innovation standpoint and fintech standpoint, yeah, I mean, we collaborated and we can collaborate even more on those topics. Invitation is extended. Obviously, we can expand on that offline if you want, Jennifer. That would be a pleasure. Actually, that's a great question. It's a great question.
Yeah, and I would conclude on that topic, about the collaboration between the ecosystems that we're always developing the Finance Montreal network in Toronto as well, and there's great partners there that have always helped us to put the two ecosystems together. So yeah, I think we have enough time for this one. So the question was, how much is it of an asset to be bilingual while working in either Toronto or Montreal?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what should be the proper answer. I think it's as Jennifer alluded to, diversity is a great aspect, the strength of Canada as a whole. So obviously we can function in both languages here. There's no issue at all. We're very open to diversity, culture. So I mean, it's not a difficulty in itself. I don't know about on your side, Jennifer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I lived in Montreal for 9 years, so my French was a lot better back then. I miss speaking French, actually. I wish I heard it more in Toronto. But what you do here in Toronto, to your point, is a lot of different languages. We're surrounded constantly. And so I think we should, obviously, the more bilingual Canadians, the better, to my mind, number one. But I think we have to be welcoming to a wide variety of languages, and that should be something we're just used to hearing all around us.
Great. Well, thank you for answering the questions from the audience. So we're at the end of the first block of this morning. Thank you again, Jacques and Jennifer, for being with us and having this interesting discussion.
Merci Mathieu. Merci Jennifer.
Merci beaucoup.
All right. Have a great morning. So we're going to move to the next block of this event, which is about regulation. So we're going to have Oumar Diallo, who is a Director of Fintech and Innovation at the AMF. And after his presentation, we're going to have Pat Forgione, who's a partner at Macmillan. But first, it's my pleasure to welcome Oumar, who's going to present about their regulatory supervision and support of financial technologies in Quebec. Salut, Oumar.
Salut Mathieu, bonjour, hi everyone. It's my pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you for the invitation, and I would also like to thank Veronique Doucet, Jennifer Reynolds, and Jacques for their introductory words. I think it's an excellent event to see how we are all pushing together, to make sure that our fintech ecosystem is thriving in Canada and also internationally. So I will do a screen share. So I hope you see it. So normally it should be there. Yes, perfect. So today I will talk about what is AMF, but also what we do on regular supervision and how we support the fintechs here in Quebec. So first of all, the AMF is supervised by the Finance Ministry of the province of Quebec. We have offices in Quebec City and Montreal. We are an integrated regulator, which means that we regulate securities, derivatives, insurance and deposit-taking institutions like Desjardins, distribution of financial products and services, money services businesses, and credit assessment agents. AMF is also a member of the Canadian Securities Administrators, so that is the umbrella organization of all securities regulators across Canada. And more precisely, we are also very involved in the Global Financial Innovation Network. I will give you more details after in a couple of minutes. The Global Financial Innovation Network is a network that is that was put in place back in 2019. The GFIN is the International Network of financial regulators that support financial innovation at the best interest of consumers. We are over 60 regulators working together, and we discuss together with information sharing, best practices, etc. And we also have important joint policy work on certain key policy areas. One very important initiative we have is cross-border trials. Means that, for example, if a company wants to test a product or service in different jurisdiction, there is the possibility to do that. So, for example, a company that is based, for example, in the UK can test here in Canada and see how it might operate in the jurisdictions here in Canada. And we are right now finishing the latest cross-border trial exercise that was launched in December. We are also part of IOSCO, that is the International Organization of Securities Commission. So we also have a close collaboration with securities regulators across the world. And last but not least, on the international level, our fintech agreements we have with a dozen of other counterparts around the world. And we have a close collaboration with our colleagues in France, but also with Singapore. And it's interesting that Jennifer Reynolds mentioned the international missions. We went to Singapore with the fintech mission back in 2019 because we signed a MOU with Singapore. And those agreements are here to facilitate context between regulators, but also to facilitate the flow of fintechs that are interested going to Singapore, for example, or coming to Canada. And now with our role in the ecosystem. So I'm very happy today to be surrounded by all our key partners, namely Finance Montréal. Of course, our role is to ensure consumer protection and market efficiency, and also to provide personalized support for fintech entrepreneurs with our innovation hub. But we work closely, of course, with Finance Montréal through the Fintech Station. Also, other initiatives we have with the research share we have on fintech. That is a research share we have together with Finance Montréal, and that is housed at the business school ESG UQAM here in Montreal. We also work closely with Fintech Cadence that Mathieu mentioned earlier to make sure that we promote the next generation of fintechs. We work closely also in the international artificial intelligence space with the research center IVADO, and also with Algora Lab. We have right now a workshop. We have right now workshops going on the use of responsible AI in the finance industry. So we have a couple of workshops, and the last one is on Tuesday. So it's very important for us to be close to the ecosystem because it also makes sure that we, as the regulators, are up to date and up to speed on how to support, but also supervise the market. And of course, our strategy is based on leadership and influence and close engagement and investment and mobilization. Also, the approach on regulation is also it is also technologically neutral. So it means that when we work around the new business models, etc., we have a technologically neutral approach, and it's always principle-based. I can eventually give more details later. So as I mentioned, the Innovation Hub, so personalized support for fintech entrepreneurs that might seek eventually some advice on how regulation operates. We can refer them to experts, depending on the file that is presented. And also, a business model can be eventually eligible to the CSA sandbox. So the Canadian Securities Administrators Sandbox is a sandbox we have across Canada that we manage with other regulators from all provinces. We also have internally what we call agile projects, and we do also strategic intelligence on the latest trends on fintech and digital transformation. So it means that we work closely to have a precise understanding of what is going on, for example, in different areas. It can be on mobile payments, crypto, currency, automated tools, big data. More recently, we are pushing for digital ID and to have a better and close understanding of how digital ID solutions operates across Canada. So we just joined recently DIAC, so that is developing the pan-Canadian trust framework in digital ID. And we also have an internal task force on open data and open banking. We have a Fintech Lab also internally that allows us to have a deeper assessment of new technologies we see, and also see how we can bring required knowledge and skills to our personnel at AMF to make sure that we are also up to speed with all the different developments in the fintech space. And last but not least, we have a technological innovation advisory committee called CCIT, where we have 15 experts from the industry that advise us on different topics. And by the way, there is openings right now at the CCIT, and the deadline is tomorrow if you are interested to submit your application. On the CSA regulatory sandbox, it is addressed to innovative business models with clear consumer benefit. It is here to help eventually startups and incumbents with assistance with regulation, and it makes sure that, for example, if you have a business model that eventually has implication on securities law, that eventually there can be some adjustments or support to make sure that your firm tests the business model before, for example, before going with new products or new initiatives. So you can contact us, of course, to have more information on the CSA regulatory sandbox at fintech@l'autorité.qc.ca. On the CSA sandbox, of course, there are different use cases that are looked at. We have ICOs that are looked at, cryptocurrency investment funds that were looked at, funding platforms, and there is also, with the CSA regulatory sandbox work, some guidance that is given, for example, on token offerings, or also what's right now going on crypto asset trading platforms. So we had recently a couple of regulatory announcements that were made, and those are also accessible on our different platforms and websites where details can be found. Also, some thoughts when you deal with regulators. So it's also important to also have in mind how your client's regulatory framework operates. It's always helpful. Also to think if you're regulated abroad, this can be also something that is to be considered. Also, of course, protection of data and cybersecurity issues. That is also something to be considered. Also, the fact that there is also involvement on the fair treatment of consumers. And finally, to deal with regulators, it's always to understand the regulator's mandate. So be it here in Canada or abroad, to do your homework, of course, when you have a new product or service to see eventually what could be regulatory involvements. Seek counsel, of course, if needed. So when I mean seek counsel, sometimes it's also important to be supported on the legal side. So don't hesitate to have a legal counsel if required. And of course, trust is key in everything you do in business. So I'm open now for questions, and don't hesitate to contact us if necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Uma, for your presentation. So stay with us. We're gonna move through to the presentation of Pat, and then we're gonna come back for the Q&A. So again, I invite the audience to put their questions in the Q&A. So now for the next presentation, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Pat Forgione, who's a partner at Macmillan, to present about the regulatory framework for fintech in Canada. Pat.
Thank you very much. And I hope everybody can see the presentation here. And if anybody can't, just let me know. One of the, and what I'm going to be trying to look at, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to talk to people about regulatory framework of fintechs here in Canada in general, and for these purposes here in Ontario. I know it's not one of the most exciting features of this type of conference, but it's probably one of them just as important as a lot of other items in the sense of making sure that you are compliant with your regulatory obligations. The presentation that I've got here on the screen, it goes into a lot more detail that I'm going to go into here on the in this sort of segment, but I've sort of left in.
I'm sorry, Pat, to interrupt. Can you put your presentation in full screen, please, so the audience can see it well? I think you just can click on the from beginning. I think it's going to work.
Is that working?
Or F5? No, we're not. We're still not seeing it full screen. Can you press F5? I think. All right. Well.
Let me know if that.
Yeah, resume slideshow. Sorry about that, everyone.
Can everybody see it?
All right. So, yeah, I think we're.
Sorry, I've got it from the beginning. It just doesn't seem to be going through here.
Right. Someone is waiting to help us. A little button on the bottom right next to for zooming. Oh yeah, okay. Just beside the 100% on the right below bottom side, to the right.
This one here?
I think so. Okay, also that's all right, Pat. You can go on. We can see it.
Well, my apologies for that. I thought we had it all worked out on our pre-call, but as I said, this will be available for everyone going forward. So by all means, if anybody has any questions afterwards, please give me a call. What I'm going to try to do here is really give you a 50,000-foot view of the regulatory landscape that fintechs sort of encounter here in Canada, in particular here in Ontario, and what you need to look for in connection with operating here in Ontario from a regulatory landscape. And as Umar indicated, one of the biggest things that you'll find in Canada is that you're probably going to need some legal advice, at least to steer you in the right direction. Unfortunately, in Canada, not unfortunately, but one of the realities of being here in Canada is that you've got a federal system of government where you've got both federal and provincial laws that apply. So I think it'd be a little difficult to sort of just go through provincial laws when you've also got federal laws that are going to apply when you're operating here in Canada. So I'll go over, again, very high level at what you should probably be looking at when you're looking to invest here in Ontario or operate here in Ontario as a fintech. I always use this as an example or as a feature of my presentation. If there's one thing that you should, one slide that you probably want to keep from the presentation is this. Fintech, as we know, there's no specific fintech regulation. There's no law that covers all of what you need to do as a fintech. It really depends on what industry you're in. So fintech regulation may cover one or more of all of these different areas of legal compliance. So I usually use this as a checklist to try and, whenever I'm dealing with a fintech client, to indicate, does your business cover any of these areas that you need to comply with? And what I'm going to do in this presentation is just go over a few of these. I'm not going to go over the tax ones. I think tax is individual to most companies. And I'm not going to go over the corporate again. That's sort of mixed in with tax and the various other issues that are sort of individual. But I will go over a couple of these other ones to just see what you should be looking at as a fintech when you're starting to operate here in Canada. So the applicable law, I think one of the first things that you're going to look at when you're looking to operate here in Ontario is, what is the fintech doing business with consumers? And if so, you've got a consumer protection aspect to your business. And that way, and in that respect, you need to comply with consumer protection legislation here in Ontario and then in any other province. For example, any fintech that's lending, that's not a regulated financial institution, is going to have to comply with consumer protection legislation. Online marketplace lenders have to comply with consumer protection legislation. And what these consumer protection legislation basically does, the Consumer Protection Act here in Canada, in Ontario, Consumer Reporting Act here in Ontario, they provide basically some protections for consumers, individual consumers, such as disclosure requirements, what you can do if the consumer default, what type of information you need to provide to consumers if you're doing some sort of credit report. So that's the first thing, if you're dealing with consumers, that you should be looking at here in Ontario. Is there a consumer protection aspect to this? And what do I need to have in my documentation and my disclosures in order to ensure that I'm compliant? A second area that you need to comply with, or that you should really be thinking about, and which is an area of a lot of discussion these days all over the world, not just here in Ontario, Canada, or the rest of Canada, is privacy law. And whenever you're dealing, if you're a company that deals, or fintech that deals with personal information of an individual, you're going to have privacy law issues that you're going to need to deal with. You're going to need to, provide or obtain consents relating to collecting the information, using the information, and disclosing the information. I mean, this is very high level, but that is, in essence, that's really what privacy legislation tries to do. Tries to protect the information that personal information that you're obtaining from your customer and require you to get the required consents. Now, privacy legislation is one of these hybrids where it's actually could be governed at the federal level or at the provincial level. Here's where I think Quebec and Ontario differ a little bit. Quebec has its own privacy legislation, and given that it's been deemed to be substantially similar to the federal legislation, most fintechs can just comply, to the extent they're operating in Quebec, can comply with the Quebec privacy legislation. Ontario does not have, privacy legislation that is, for lack of a better word, substantially similar to that of the federal legislation. So, if you are operating here in Ontario, you will need to comply with PPADA, which is the current federal legislation. The good part is that PPADA and a lot of the provincial private sector privacy legislation, such as in BC, Alberta, and Quebec, are similar. So to the extent that you are complying with Quebec, there may be some tweaks, but you'll be able to comply. I don't think it's going to be a significant issue in complying with PPADA if you're operating here in Ontario. There's always going to be, depending on what industry you're in, you may need to comply with industry-specific privacy legislation, such as in the healthcare industry, but that will depend specifically on what industry you're actually serving, or what information of what industry you're actually serving. Recent developments. Currently, the federal government has introduced the Digital Charter Implementation Act, which is looking to try and reform and update PPADA. PPADA has been around since probably 2000, and a lot has changed since then. So it's really, if passed, it's going to really reform how you deal with electronic documents and consumer privacy information. I think it's still a little ways off to actually getting a consensus to being able to come into play, but just so that everybody's aware, that's in the works. And I think the other thing to note about the new privacy legislation, I think it's going to have to go hand in hand with whatever we're going to decide on open banking, because I think the two are inextricably tied together. So there's going to have to be a discussion on that end. And there's also, the other thing that you will need to comply with is anti-spam legislation, which is federal anti-spam legislation. Again, that you require consent in order to distribute commercial electronic messages. The next item that you're going to run into is anti-money laundering legislation. And that's regulated at the federal level with the Proceeds of Crime, Money Laundering, and Terrorist Financing Act. I'm just going to call it AML legislation for short, but what this legislation does is it imposes requirements for anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, know your client identification rules, and suspicious transactions reporting. And it applies to any reporting. It applies to a prescribed list of reporting entities that are specifically set out in the legislation. And these reporting entities have to be registered with FinTrack. So how does this apply to fintechs? Well, for the most part, the most relative type of fintech that's going to encounter compliance or going to require compliance with anti-money laundering legislation is going to be the money services businesses. Those that deal with foreign exchange deal with foreign exchange, remitting funds or transmitting funds, dealing with virtual currency. So all these are going to be subject to AML legislation and to reporting and compliance issues. So just keep that in mind if you are operating or could be potentially operating in a money services businesses and have some of these characteristics. Next area is payments. And as Jennifer indicated, there's a lot of talk these days of the modernization of the payment system. Right now, the oversight of the payment system is really at two levels. You've got Payments Canada and Bank of Canada. And it's really at this point just regulated by as to what type of entity you are rather than what you're doing. So at this point, really the banks and FIs are the ones that are really subject to a lot of the directives put out by Payment Canada with respect to payments. For fintechs right now, they're largely unregulated on a payment standpoint. But again, the modernization efforts that are being sort of looked at these points really are going towards trying to revolutionize the payments regulation to try and make it more regulating the actual function of what you're doing rather than what type of entity you are, which will likely capture some fintechs that are in the payments area. The good part is that it'll probably open up some opportunities for fintechs to come into the payments area a lot easier, but it also will probably put some more compliance obligations on fintechs. But again, I think the whole emphasis here, like a lot of the legislation and changes that are being made, is more to try and bring ourselves up to where we are and make where we are from a finance perspective, a fintech perspective, technology perspective, and try and make it easier for us and for fintechs to actually operate here in Canada and in Ontario. And I've got sort of a summary of the recent developments that you can look at on your own. Another area that that fintechs may want to take a quick look at if they're looking to operate, if they're operating here in Canada, is federally regulated financial institution regulation, the Bank Act, Insurance Companies Act. Why, do you ask, should fintechs be doing that? Well, there's two reasons or two sort of circumstances where fintechs should look at these. Number one, if they're going to be taking on deposit taking activities, and at that point, they really need to, you're really looking at trying to become a bank or a regulated financial institution, which is really burdensome, and I think a lot of fintechs stay away from that. And the other one is collaboration with regulated FIs. And this is probably the bigger issue, is that a lot of fintechs are looking to collaborate with FIs. There was this whole discussion when, a number of years ago as to whether fintechs were going to be collaborating or whether they were going to be a disruptor or whether they were going to be in competition. And I think it's, there's been a lot of evidence that shows that there's been a lot of collaboration between fintechs and regulated FIs. And I think what you need to keep in mind when you're dealing with regulated FIs is that they're subject to that FI regulation, the Bank Act, and there's restrictions on what they can do, who they can own, what type of arrangements they can enter into. And that is going to come into what type of arrangements you can actually, or type of partnerships you can enter into with FIs. So just keep that in mind. There's been some changes to the Bank Act and to the other FI legislation in order to try to make it a little bit, to try and bring it into, try and make it easier for banks to actually collaborate with fintechs, particularly in the power section. Devil's always going to be in the details. They haven't been completely passed yet, but there's movement towards making it easier for this collaboration between fintechs and regulated FIs. The final avenue or final area that we're going to take a quick look at is securities regulation. And as Umar pointed out, this is an area of provincial jurisdiction. And here in Ontario, we have the Ontario Securities Commission, as well as the Canadian Securities Administrators, which sort of try and coordinate between the various securities commissions across the country. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this. I think Umar did a great job talking about the CSA and the sandbox. But keep in mind that securities law regulates the issue and sale of, quote, security. And that's a pretty broad term. So you need to see whether or not what you're doing is a security and whether you're actually issuing or trading in securities. And to the extent you are, then you're technically start getting into the area where you need to have registration perspectives and disclosure requirements complied with. Also, those that advise in the trading and underwriting of securities would be captured here. I think from a general standpoint, I think the Securities Commissions have done a great job at least trying to simplify or make it easier for fintechs and small and startups to try and navigate securities regulation through things such as the CSA sandbox that Umar talked about. And I think that, there's a lot of initiatives going on that are trying to make it easier for fintechs to try and navigate really complex and sometimes really burdensome securities regulation that can be quite expensive. Here in Ontario, Ontario's had the launch pad, which has basically been sort of an advisory board and sort of an avenue into to advise and to help smaller companies move into the CSA sandbox. And just recently, Ontario launched, the OC launched the Office for Economic Growth and Innovation, which is going to be, started operating in March, but still in the process of sort of issuing or starting to, function on a full-time basis. I call it the Innovation Office or the IO Office, but one of the main goals of this IO office is to try, there's three main goals, but one of the main goals, which would be of interest to a lot of people here, would be the fact that they're looking to try and set up their own Ontario sandbox, which potentially could be much more extensive than what the CSA has to offer. So that's sort of in the works. And they're also trying to, provide guidance in trying to help particularly a lot of startups to operate here in Canada, here in Ontario. So that's an exciting new feature. I know that the CEO, and we've talked, a couple of people from our firm talked to the CEO of IO on a regular basis, and they're quite excited and quite anxious to try and move this forward and try and help out and bring some flexibility to particularly in the fintech area to try and help them navigate a lot of the securities aspects of this. And that's it on my end. As I said, there's a lot more information in the slides which will be made available to you. And by all means, my email's there. You can feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions about anything that I've talked to or anything whatsoever. I'm more than happy to do it. I know that I went through a lot here, but I was trying to give you at least a broad overview of all this stuff here.
Thank you, Pat. That was super interesting, and a great update about regulation and the Payments Canada modernization of the payment rails. So I'm going to invite Umar back for the Q&As. Umar, are you still with us? Great. So we have a question from the audience from Lawrence Cook. Thank you, Lawrence, for your questions. So are you concerned about Bank of Canada's retail payment oversight framework with the overlap in market conduct? That's Lawrence's question.
Yes, so I don't have a precise answer for your question, unfortunately. I have to see more about what the Bank of Canada issued recently on this subject. But I can eventually come back to you with a more detailed answer. So Lawrence, I invite you to write me directly, so I can see what we did internally on this subject. But I know probably that some colleagues internally followed what was done on at the Bank of Canada on retail payments.
Great, thanks, Umar. I have another question for both of you before we move to the next block with our entrepreneurs. How the regulators, and I think you've talked about that, but maybe just to deepen the topic a little bit more, and we've been talking a lot about collaboration today. So how the regulators collaborate to support the fintech that is ready to export, and what tools are available?
Omar, do you want to start off with that? And then
Yes, I can start off, of course. I mentioned during my presentation that we have some cooperation agreements between regulators on the fintech space. So we call them like fintech bridge. So, for example, if you are a Canadian or fintech based in Quebec, for example, and you want to operate in France, you can use these fintech bridges or fintech agreements we have between regulators. So it can facilitate some paperwork for you. And this goes in both sides. For example, a French fintech that wants to come to Canada or Quebec, for example, can eventually use also this agreement we have in place. So this is one tool we have at our disposal. And other tools is also the fact that we collaborate very closely with the ecosystem. Remember, Mathieu, when we went to France together, the latest fintech mission, we had the 15 fintechs in the delegation, I think, and we also took this opportunity to visit the French regulator that we met together. So those are examples on how regulators can support also the international development of fintechs.
Yeah, and just and that was a great answer by Omar on the regulatory side of stuff and sort of the relationships we have. I think there's a lot more on the security side than there are on the other areas, and I think those are all in the phase of development. I think from my experience, what I've seen, and again, there's all those formal relationships. There's a lot of it's also being done by the private sector in the sense of I know that I speak 4 or 5 times a year to UK fintech delegations, both regulators and fintechs that are looking to operate here in Canada. And there's a lot of that going along where there's a lot of education of the regulators themselves and also of the fintech companies. So I think it's all a work in progress. I think as we continue to modernize our legislation, I think a lot of our legislation that's being modernized now, such as the new privacy legislation, is very much a lot more similar to what the UK has. So the more we continue to modernize our legislation, the more that I think the closer we get that getting some sort of harmony, even if we don't have a specific relationship or specific agreement between it. I think the consistency, and we'll need to see where we come on open banking, which is another big issue that is going to come down the pipeline.
For sure. Well, thank you both. This is all the time that we had this morning with you. So again, thank you for your presentation. That was very interesting, and I'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mathieu.
So for the last block of presentation today, I'm gonna welcome 2 fintech entrepreneurs. So first, let me introduce to you Rafael Busquila, who's president and co-founder at Mako Fintech, and also Nadir Ibrahim, who's co-founder at Lean Payments. So welcome. Thank you for being here with us today.
Hey guys, thanks for having us, Mathieu.
Great. So, before I ask first question, just so you know, just so the audience know, Mako Fintech is a fintech company based out of Montreal that has business in Toronto, and Lean Payments is a Toronto-based company that has business in Montreal, and that's why we invited those 2 great entrepreneurs today to talk a little bit about their experience in the other city. So maybe I'm going to start with Rafael. Can you just tell us a little bit about the company, and maybe why did you found the company?
Sure. So Mako Fintech, we're a SaaS for wealth managers and banks. What we do is substantially automating forms. So substantially most of what wealth managers and banks do is filling out forms, getting other people to fill them out, putting data into them and sending it to other systems. This is done for lots of reasons, like onboarding new clients, selling investments like subscription agreements, internal kind of process approvals between different divisions, compliance forms, regulatory forms. Sort of the forms are kind of the API of finance. So we have a really powerful low-code framework that turns form-based processes into cloud applications that integrate with our clients' existing systems. We've got some great clients among big asset managers and banks, as well as small wealth managers and exempt market dealers. Why did I start the company? Well, it's actually my second company. I previously started a company called CoPower, which is an impact investing firm, exempt market dealer that for Canadians who care about the environment and have an investment portfolio. We help them align their portfolio with their environmental values. So started that company along with a couple co-founders. And grew it to about 1,000 investors across Canada. We were registered as an exempt market dealer, and had this idea that we would make it easy for everyday Canadians across Canada to invest in green energy or in green bonds. And so I was overwhelmed with the challenge of various forms and various regulatory issues that we had to comply with in onboarding and selling these exempt market products to clients. So that's kind of where the genesis of understanding that a better way could be done. What's interesting is that CoPower is actually a company with kind of two headquarters, one in Montreal, one in Toronto. So we did a lot of business in both Montreal and Toronto. Up until COVID, I was going to Toronto probably once or twice a month, even with Mako. So it's a discussion that I'm really excited to participate in.
Great. Well, thanks. And just by the way, the Mako is one of the startups, fintech startups that we have at the fintech station, and very glad to have them there. So Nadir, I will ask you the same question. Just maybe tell us a little bit about Lean Payments and why did you start this company out of Toronto?
Sure. First of all, thanks for the opportunity, guys. I really appreciate it. So Lean Payments is basically focused on the SMEs. It's no secret that SMEs is the engine of the economy. And we focus particularly for the cross-border payments, helping the SMEs to export and import. So we're trying to help with the money movement, both receiving or sending. So why we started this company? Well, it's ironic that we're living in a time that Amazon parcels will arrive faster than payments. If you think of it, the Amazon parcels move 24/7, but today we live in a world that our payments only move 9 to 5, give or take, on only business days. So the question is why that's the case? I come from CIBC, where I worked at the international payments. So I have a close connection of how it works, the dynamics. I've seen the challenges that the SMEs is going through. So as an entrepreneur, you see the challenges as an opportunities. And that's how we started Lean Payments. And, happy to take more questions. Go ahead, Matthew.
Of course. Well, yeah, thank you. And it's interesting that this kind of problem that you addressed, and it's definitely one of the areas of interest of our payment accelerator of what I was mentioning, earlier, about the SMBs going digital. So let me ask you both. At what point of the company did you decide to start developing or attacking, if I can say it like that, the other city market, and why? So maybe
gonna go first,
yeah,
Nadir?
Absolutely.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, I was
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll start. So it's actually not something that we did. I think we we were kind of pan-Canadian from the start. I had a pretty substantial network in finance and like every industry, I think, like when you've been in it for a while, is a pretty small village. So, at any level, kind of like the two networks, the two cities are pretty interconnected anyways. I would say that, as a company that's selling services to banks and wealth managers, like I said, I was in Toronto like pretty much from day one. I did have my initial clients first in Canada, first in Montreal, but very, very quickly got clients in Toronto and Calgary and Vancouver as well. So as a software as a service company, like the only barrier to doing business across Canada is really like your ability to make networks with the people that you connect with. And kind of prior to COVID, I really made an effort to like fly out to different cities and like meet people in person, kind of have the opportunity to have a beer with someone and kind of get to know them on a personal level. I miss that. I wish that we could still do that, but to a certain degree, since COVID, I haven't stepped on a plane in like well over 12 months at this point. Honestly, the fact that at least everyone else in Canada is in the same boat, I think, has opened minds to the idea that like you can just get on a Zoom with anyone. So I guess like the intention was there from the beginning, the action was there kind of from the beginning, and then COVID kind of made it easier.
I know you're right. It's one of the maybe of the upside of this pandemic. Much easier to connect with the rest of people in Canada. I've seen the same thing on my side. So what about you, Nadir? At what point did you start making business in Montreal in the company's life history?
Yeah, so as an entrepreneur, you always look at a support system and you look for your customers, like the demand system, like the supply and the demand. So from a demand perspective, we serve the SME. There's a concentration here in Ontario. I think about 40% of the SMEs in Canada concentrated here in Ontario. So that was maybe a wise decision to be closer to your consumers. But on the flip side, Montreal has a supportive system for fintech. If you look at access to funds, collaboration with other fintechs, you see Montreal is a very attractive place to be in. I was at Ivy, and when I was about to start my company, a few of my classmates is actually entrepreneurs doing fintechs, and they were from Montreal. So that's what also drew me to have a presence in Montreal. So that's how we end up with, a presence both in Montreal and Toronto.
Oh, that's very interesting. And do you only have like clients in Montreal, or you also have maybe investors or other kind of partners?
Most of our clients for now is in Toronto, and Montreal is mainly like, you get the incubators and the support systems from Montreal.
Okay, that's very interesting and quite coherent. I'm glad, and it's not we didn't even talk about this before the event, so I'm glad that it's very coherent with what we mentioned earlier. I guess it represent, you had some challenges at some point too, because it's the same country, but still there are differences. Did you have any challenges of going to the other city?
I can take that. I think I just need to be pay attention to the regulations. You might assume that everything works the same, but there are some nuances that there's minor differences in the regulations. So that's one of the challenges. It's not a major challenge, I think, but that's what comes to mind. I don't know what
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I would say there's like pros and cons to the business circumstances in each city. I wouldn't say that either either city is better than the other, except Montreal is obviously the best. I think Toronto obviously has the concentration of finance. I think that also something that at least has been my experience, and I think maybe not enough people say it, but Toronto just has terrific openness to business culture. I find very much there's an openness to meeting someone new and talking about a project and let's go with it kind of thing. I think maybe some other cities are maybe a little more insular than Toronto comparatively in Canada. I've always found doing business in Toronto to be just a terrific experience. From that perspective, Montreal, like Nadir said, has I think some really good institutional things going for it. There's institutions like Desjardins, Fondation, FTQ, that are committed to investing in Quebec-based businesses. There's obviously Finance Montreal has been quite a force with the Fintech Station, which is terrific, meeting place and value proposition for fintech. So, I think that it's not, it's sort of apples to oranges comparison where they're both delicious fruit. What I like about, our current circumstances, we can be in Montreal, but, we also have investors and, even a bunch of remote employees and clients in Toronto. So.
Yeah, so what I'm getting from this is that even it's two different cities, it's pretty close one to another, and when you're a fintech entrepreneur, you definitely want to be in both those cities to developing your business. We only have 4 minutes left, and it's always my favorite question that I ask to entrepreneurs. I would like you to tell us a story. Do you have any tips for success through maybe an anecdote that you lived? Nadir, of course, dealing with Montreal, and Raphael dealing with Toronto. Is there a business an anecdote you think that kind of images your experience in the city? I like those smiles. I like those smiles.
Really asking us to perform on the spot here. Maybe we should have practiced more beforehand. So the question was a story related to doing business in the two cities.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything that surprised you at some point, or that you particularly enjoyed, doing business there, that is maybe a little more informal, and you think that represents the city?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I'll say that the 7:30 a.m. Porter flight to Toronto is a terrific place to make connections. You're going to meet some great people on that plane. But that's actually my secret networking kind of meeting place.
Well, that's a good one.
I don't really have much to add to that.
I totally agree. I'm sure I experienced it less than yourself, but the times that I went there, it was, you're right, it was amazing. The people that I was getting across in that waiting area at the airport. Nadir, do you have anything to share with us before we close this discussion?
Maybe one thing that I wish if I learned French earlier in my career. It's challenging. I will be taking notes, and whenever there is a French word being, even just the name of the place, from, like, I can't take notes. It's blank for me, right? I can't even tell whether that was an A or F or anything. So I always either forget people's name or street's name, right? So that's why, like, I'm telling my wife, the first thing what we're doing is like we're putting our kids in French immersions for sure.
So it's a little more. It's kind of a bit exotic, even if it's just next to the city before because of the French language and the culture. Gentlemen, thank you so much for participating in that discussion with me today to talk about your experiences in Toronto, in Montreal, doing fintech business. So to the audience, check those companies out: Lean Payments and Mako Fintech. Both great entrepreneurs. I hope that you enjoyed the discussion. It's already the end for the whole event. It was the last part. So we have a networking session coming up. So Anaïs just shared in the chat the Zoom link to join the networking session. And for one last time, I would like to thank all of our panelists for their excellent presentations. I remind you that the webinar will be available on the CCMM website and their YouTube page. And we'll see you in the networking session. I wish you all a good day. Goodbye. Bonne journée tout le monde.